Every ecosystem is made up of a variety of living and non-living things. The living things within an ecosystem depend on each other to obtain their energy. In this virtual lab, we'll be looking at the components of ecosystems and how this matter and energy is cycled. So let's start with a simple food chain. A simple diagram called a food chain represents how energy flows in an ecosystem. A food chain starts with producers. These are the plants at the bottom of the chain. Next, a first-order consumer eats the plants to obtain energy. And then next in the chain is the second-order consumer, followed by a tertiary consumer. Food chains typically have 4 levels, though this can vary. As you can see, in this particular thing, we have a simple food chain with 3 organisms, and then there's a 4 linked organism food chain, and then it can go up to 5. But no matter what it looks like, it gets more complicated than that. A food web is the overlapping of food chains within an ecosystem. Just like humans don't always eat the exact same thing all the time, organisms in the ecosystems have variety in their diets too. Therefore, all of these food chains overlap each other. All ecosystems start with the energy from the sun. Without sunlight, plants cannot undergo the process of photosynthesis. Using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, plants make sugar and release oxygen. When a consumer comes along and eats the plant, it gains some energy from these sugars. It also uses some of that energy to keep itself alive. When the next consumer in the food chain eats the first consumer, energy is passed from one consumer to the next. Since the amount of energy decreases with each level of the food chain, ecosystems can only support smaller numbers of consumers as you go up the food chain. So in this example, we see that the rabbit is getting energy from the grasses that it eats. The grasses, the producers, they start with 100% of energy because they are using everything that they're gaining from the sunlight to keep themselves alive. The rabbits come along and eat some of that grass, so they are getting energy, and that energy that they're getting from the grasses, they are also using it to keep themselves alive. But then here comes the snakes. The snakes eat the rabbits. The snake gets a little bit less of the energy at that particular level in the energy pyramid, and they're also using energy to keep themselves alive. So just like it says, the energy decreases with each level of the food chain as it cycles through the ecosystem. Now it's your turn. You will be pausing the video here in just a minute and using this land and aquatic ecosystem to analyze the components and how the energy is flowing. You can use this image in the video, but I also have a copy on your lab report. So go ahead and pause the video now, complete part 1, and then come back and continue on with part 2. So you've had practice with producers and consumers, but what about the third component, our decomposers? Decomposers are organisms, such as worms or maggots, that break down dead matter. This is important to the cycling of matter in an ecosystem. As the decomposers feed on dead animals and plants, they break down the molecules into carbon dioxide and water molecules that go back into the soil or, in an aquatic ecosystem, into the water. The amount of matter in an ecosystem never changes. It just cycles through the ecosystems in different ways. And decomposers are an important role in this cycling of matter. But before we get to the next virtual lab activity, you need to complete a little bit of background information on your lab report. So pause the video and go to part 2, section 1, background. When you have completed that, come back for the virtual lab activity. So let's get this virtual lab activity started. We're going to see a decomposer in action. Let me go through your materials and equipment here. I have 1 packet of dry yeast for each bottle. I have some sugar, and as you can see by the post-its there in the picture, how much sugar will be in each container. And I've got 3 bottles, and they will have 1 cup of warm water. So let's get this party started. I already have the 1 cup of warm water in each bottle, and to each bottle I'm going to add 1 packet of yeast. So go ahead and add this one in here. And I'll add this one in here. And I'll add this one in here. And now in our first bottle, we're not going to add any sugar. In the second one, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of sugar. And in the last one, I'm going to add 4 teaspoons of sugar. And very quickly, I'm going to shake the bottles up. Open the lid, add a balloon. Let's get this one shook up. Open it up, add a balloon, and the last one. Shake it up. We are going to let these sit and see what they do over the next hour. Make sure you complete section 2 on your lab report. Good luck.